I'm David Gadarian, and welcome to The Flip Story. We're often told that success and to succeed in the digital world, you have to play by the rules of the platform. You have to feed the machine. You have to do whatever you're told. You have to follow the next, the latest, the greatest. But my guest today, Brian Wallace, he did something different. Moved away from the noise of New York into the Midwest. He anchored his life in deep spiritual foundation. He built a massive global network, not by being the loudest person in the room, but rather by being the most intentional. Brian, welcome to the show.
David, only a pleasure. I'm glad I'm here.
It's really nice to have you on the show. So I think for the folks, I've known you for a long time, probably going on 10 years. So obviously you're not going to share this for my benefit, but for those who haven't had that privilege of knowing you for that long, can you just share with us a little bit about your now? What are you up to right now?
What am I up to right now? Well,
Yeah.
sitting here in Cincinnati with a nice little metal tree behind me because Zoom backgrounds ain't good enough. But the main two things that I'm doing, aside from having a busy family, are the art and science of infographics, visual storytelling, and media on the NowSourcing side, which this year turns 20 years old, and also trying to put together a global innovation summit in Kentucky, because where else do you do global innovation summits? That's entering its third year this May.
Well, we're going to be talking about both of those things. 20 years though. Wow. Congratulations.
Thanks, man.
That's quite a run for anything to say in a business climate. To have 20 years of viability is quite impressive. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. I think for the audience, they're obviously very curious how to maintain and sustain in the design space. And there's, design overall, infographics overall, very hyper disrupted right now. So we're going to have some fun there. I'm excited to get into that, but let's start at the beginning. So where'd you grow up?
Born in Brooklyn, where, see this substance? For those of you who aren't watching it by video, I'm holding up a water bottle, except I said water and Brooklynites call it water.
Water.
You'll notice that I talk in a way that is to be understood by the rest of the world with a nice non-regional dialect. So although I was born in Brooklyn, grew up in Rockland County, just north of the city. You always know a New Yorker by their moniker of the city as if it is the only city on earth, sort of like that New Yorker cover that you're just looking at the curvature of the earth, and Montana and Russia and everything just kind of rambles together. Spent a decade in the field of technology, working for a variety of firms, both government, startup, Fortune 500, the whole gamut. I really enjoyed the art and science of conversation and how people think and tick and act and like and buy and all of that. And I feel like technologists sometimes are just kind of hiding behind all these acronyms.
Yeah.
So it wasn't exactly a love connection to stay with that forever.
Okay.
My wife and I had a chance to check out where the Midwest and the South come together. Louisville, Kentucky, 2 weeks before 9/11. We had to go out there for a health thing. And then we came back to New York and we said, look at that. I'm not sure we want to stay here forever.
Right.
And I didn't really like the field that we were in. So we switched to our own business and marketing, left New York, and went on over to Louisville, eventually finding our way out here to Cincinnati.
All right. So slow down a little bit. That's a very fast run through a lot of interesting things. So you're leaving New York post 9/11. Do you have a plan that you want to open up an infographics business, or is it that you want to open up a business of some kind? You and your wife want to work for yourselves?
We want to work for ourselves. We like the autonomy. We want to figure out where everything's going. Now, the name of the business is NowSourcing, and a lot of people don't realize, but NowSourcing as a name predates infographics and even marketing, because at the time we were thinking about being like an on-demand IT outsourcing type of thing, hence the name.
And you just kept the name.
It was already getting popular. What are you going to do?
So, okay. So let's stay there. So you have your original idea. You're going to leave New York with this business. Did you launch NowSourcing in New York, or you launch it in Louisville?
So year one was New York, where I had a whole menu of things and a PowerPoint of all of the stuff that we're going to do.
Right.
And if I could dig it up and show it to you right now, I would, one, be completely embarrassed, and two, that it has absolutely nothing to do with anything we do whatsoever. So everybody's like waiting for the perfect moment. They think that they have everything figured out.
Right.
There's a lot of alchemy and trial and error when it comes to this sort of thing. And you have to think about the things that you're good at and the things that the people want.
Yeah. How ruthless were you at that early stage in terms of kind of whacking things off the list and adding new things onto the list?
Well, I needed to make money and not die and have food for our family. So
Right.
at first we were trying to figure out, okay, we can make websites and do all this kind of stuff. However, what's interesting is if you go back just about 20 years ago, that was the dawn of social media.
Yep.
So I would say the first thing that I just described was a colossal failure and it didn't really match the will and needs of the world. And it didn't really seem like the fit because, like I said, I was kind of tired of technology. So why just do technology if I'm tired of technology? So when the world of social media came, it was a really interesting time because the internet was kind of fresh and new and nobody exactly knew what to do, but it really fit the way that I like to think. Because as much as I said, I'm not just so solidly all in on technology, I love to know how it thinks and
Yeah.
how it ticks along with people. So, really being good at the technology and being good at how people think was exactly what I needed to pivot that into a success in ye old social media days. We're talking back when you could have a brand and it would just have like a Facebook profile before there were pages and crazy stuff like that.
Right.
So there was definitely some very interesting Wild West stuff that we did back then. We were very early on inside places like John Deere and Jay Z when the Blueprint 2 album was coming out. So it was wild. It was some good times.
And you were
But
making social pages there? Is that primarily where you guys were living or?
more like traffic and attention. So
Okay.
there were different social media networks back then that we just figured out how to make content and be wildly popular. So a million years ago, there was a site called stumbleupon.com.
Uh-huh.
And if you could get something wildly popular on StumbleUpon, you could garner millions upon millions of views for clients. So we just had a knack for traffic and attention and putting together stories and all of that. There also, and I think this is the pivotal moment, there used to be a website called dig.com,
Yep.
D-I-G-G, which interestingly, as of this time of podcast recording, has some bit of a resurgence. And the guy who started it actually bought it back and they're trying to resuscitate it back to life.
Right.
Jury's still out if that's going to happen. But back in the day, this was like Reddit before Reddit was even big. So there were a handful of people that were curators of the internet, if you will.
Right.
So you had the eye for great content that everybody wanted to see and share. If you submitted a story and then a whole bunch of people voted on it and it front paged, sites would get so much simultaneous traffic that they would crash.
Yeah.
So I was one of maybe 100 people, not gigantic empires on the internet, but just individual people that had a knack for doing this. 100 people were responsible for about half of all the stories that would go hot on that site. So at the time, we were a small team. This is already while we're in Kentucky.
Yeah.
We were good at storytelling, we were good at art, and we were good at this whole make it go viral, although I hate that phrase, but just get it out there to the masses and know what's
Right.
interesting for the internet. And at the time, we were just doing a bunch of social media campaigns for different companies. I was writing for stuff like Mashable, and the internet was just kind of getting into gear. And we had the internet for a while, but it was really kind of getting to the next
Yeah.
level.
2.0. Yep.
Web 2.0, that's the one.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting. There might have been maybe one or two or three different companies out there that were doing infographics, but they were doing them in their infancy.
Right.
They didn't look very good. They didn't tell a very good story. They were not very serious about data science and visualizations. There were typos and spelling errors. They weren't sourcing uh, their sources very well. It just seemed like a giant mess. And I said, wow, this is, as far as I am concerned, the future of communications. Barely anybody's doing it. They're doing it badly. And I think this is something to do. So one day I just said to our small team, hey, we're just going to do this from now on instead of trying to be everything to everybody in all things social and digital marketing. And everybody's like, hooray. And what the heck is an infographic? Started explaining this to different customers we had. And we started to have some early on wins that just went ridiculously crazy on the internet. I
Right.
remember there was one about the psychology of color that we did that went so viral that Google and Adobe called us like the same week that they came out because they just couldn't believe like how it was everywhere. and we started getting basketball players contracts and companies funded and acquired. And we've just developed a knack of the art and science of the creation and distribution to make things what we call making complexity simple, visual, and influential.
I love it.
Yeah, man.
And that was to get to that moment of from everything to infographic. How far into the now sourcing journey are we talking? How many years?
Well, just a couple years. So I would say year one was try to do a bunch of tech stuff and websites, and
Right.
everybody was trying to do that. So that was pretty common, and it didn't really seem like we were hitting stride. And then in that first year or two, we were doing some different social campaigns. And it was working, but I was worried that social was getting so big and wide that how do you keep up with everything?
You can't.
You
Yeah.
can't be everything to everyone. Yeah.
Unless you scale team wise and start to big and wide. That's interesting. So that's I think a lot of people miss that. I know I certainly did because
Mm.
I was doing something similar at that time.
Mhm.
I don't know anyway, but I totally missed the big and wide. I stayed big and wide and I drowned.
Right. Well, it's hard to keep somebody front of mind when you could just do everything for everyone. I
Right.
guess you could say that we do something that could be done for everyone, but we're doing it through a narrow lens. We're doing a specific bundle of things for everyone.
How many people are in the agency now?
So we're about a dozen folks. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
So that's a neat little story there. And
Yeah,
so
man.
from a family perspective, you guys obviously, I know you're a super hard worker. Is
Somebody,
that
yeah.
well, I was going to ask, is that a choice or is that a necessity in terms of, I'd say you're still, 50 dozen people is not a massive gargantuan
Yeah.
firm. You're out
I
there
mean,
hustling a lot.
yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
like a lot of founder selling. So I like to be kind of the face, voice, visionary type of guy.
Yeah,
And I think I'm just kind of wired like that. I like to be a hard worker. Yeah.
right. Well, you are a hard worker. I've,
Mhm.
I've seen that. I've experienced that. I've enjoyed
I
that.
think, yeah, I don't think that you get excellence just by pressing a button and working a couple hours and that's it. I think that the people who run companies tend to be the ones that are driven. There's always people that will work hard for you, but I don't think they will work at the same level of intensity.
Right. But I think there's also for some founders that get to around your size, sometimes they make a different choice where they say, not that I want to take my foot off the gas pedal, but perhaps I want to go back to physically and making infographics in your example, for
Mhm.
example, and doing the actual design of the infographics
Yeah.
versus doing the selling and the founder led sales kind of journey as you described
Yeah.
it.
Well, I'm not the designer,
I
so
gather that. Yeah.
I'm not
So,
really the guy who does that lane of it.
so it was
I
never
like
your thing. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Like I can appreciate art, but I think as an outsider of the person that appreciates art, I have a different swing on it. Because if you're a pure artist, and you don't really understand a really deep dive into different areas of business and how they work and how they operate and how they make money. You're just making art that doesn't have any business insights and pragmatism. So I like to think about things in a bunch of different lenses of perception. So I'm not just thinking, how do we make this pretty and let's hang it in the museum? I'm thinking, how do we make this look really good to get the attention of the market so the market will understand themselves better? And I think that outsider perspective is something that is just so undervalued because you're not beholden to very specific structures that a lot of folks get trapped into.
That also makes sense. I think that that's probably a little less typical in my observation. Most of the folks that kind of got into digital tech, what have you, their entry point was a place of excellence. Like they kind of built their business around the thing that they were excellent at.
Right.
You often hear, the two-headed founder. One's the founder that is the sales, and the other is the engineering kind of journey. But
Right.
um,
Well, I mean, I would say I have a way to do excellence on it where I'm not necessarily the one designing the pixels, but I'm the one thinking about the way to design the pixels. Because if what I'm doing didn't exist, you would have a client that would tell designers what to do, and
Right.
they would fail because they don't understand how to translate it into something that changes the game. So, an outsider perspective to be able to simplify and cut out the noise of what clients think is important, to translate that into a visual, clear tool really does make the difference.
I want to come back to that, Brian. I want to come back to
Ah,
some a concept here.
yeah,
Um, but I want to make sure we didn't lose sight of something because it's an interesting part of your story, and it's one of what I think are one of your more interesting flips is this idea of leaving New York, the city, the
sure.
center, and New York is a pretty special place. I'm from Boston. I'm not going to pretend that, New York's not a special
We're not
place.
going to talk about baseball teams, but we can agree that they're both important cities. That's right.
I think we said we weren't going to talk about football teams. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Oof, man.
Yeah, we can go there. But in all seriousness, the thing that's really fascinating and this is going to come up in a couple different points in this story is your flip of being able to leave the heat of the big city and come into the Midwest. And you in particular, I know we've spent a lot of time offline talking about your joy and your passion for the Midwest and what you've observed. And so let's just kind of get into that now of kind of some of why you made a move like that from okay, family, great, but from a business perspective, and what do you see? And, one of the things that I've observed about you, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, is your ability to connect a lot of different dots in a lot of different and interesting ways. And I think, you just described it really well for some of the work you're doing at NowSourcing, but let's talk about location now. So you move from big city to Midwest. All right, your turn. You go.
Sure. So the first time we got to see Louisville was 2 weeks before 9/11. We came because we couldn't have kids. And then when we left, we could. So I've always had a tremendous amount of gratitude. So it wasn't like we just read something in Forbes where here's a list of the top 10 places to move to. We had a life transforming experience at a place that I think if you're coming from the Northeast or New York, you probably have certain preconceived notions about places like Kentucky, most of which are not very kind or accurate for that matter.
I don't have
So
those preconceptions.
that you do or you don't.
I do not. I'm just going
You
on
do,
record.
you do not, and I'm glad. And I think that's an appropriate thing to have on record. But I'm sure you've met plenty of people in places like New York or Boston or LA or San Francisco or
Right.
Miami that have a negative or neutral at best predisposition for that part of our country.
Fair.
That's
Okay. I found really interesting about you in particular is not that. It's that your passion for what your ability to discover and to kind of drink that water and do it with a really
mm,
intense amount of enthusiasm. So I wanted to kind of
yeah.
do you think is that a native Brianism, or is that something that you were just a naturally curious person? You discovered Louisville and you were like, this is amazing. And were you one of those people, I guess, before you actually discovered Louisville?
I don't know that I really sat up at night thinking about Kentucky a lot
Fair.
before we
Yep.
went.
That's
So
probably where
then,
I fit.
when, right. So it isn't necessary. So forget everything I just said, right? Like it isn't that everybody is obsessed with saying that that part of the country is dumb or behind or not as good or whatever the case. I think a lot of times people just don't have really any feeling, but we
Right.
had a strong feeling because we needed to come for a specific reason. But I'm saying that there's a difference between whatever preconceived notions you may or may not have versus going somewhere firsthand, experiencing it and learning from it. So I think it's not just that I'm easily excitable about nothing and I'm just an idiot, just like, here, look, here's a new shiny thing. I am open to a lot of different frames of thought. Everybody has a different story to tell. Different people have different upbringing and different experiences. Cultures throughout the country and throughout the world are very different. People have a lot of things in common, but there's a lot of nuance. I like to be a good global citizen because I'm constantly talking to people all over the world in my network that we work with or I'm connected with on LinkedIn or that we meet at events. And I feel like all the experiences that I've had so far have prepared me for that. I think, I mean, even being a child of Metro New York, my family had a jewelry business, and I got to see people from all over the planet always come into that. So even at a
Right.
young age, I've been experienced to a lot of different people, modalities of thought, as opposed to a lot of people that I think I live in a place, I never venture 5 miles away. Everybody's like me, and that's fine. There's comfort and familiarity. But for me, I just feel like it's not enough. I think it's an incomplete understanding of humanity.
I was
So,
going to ask. Yeah, no, no, no. I
mm,
think you just answered it actually. It's not enough. You
mm,
did you have that not enough idea from day zero of you were just naturally a curious person, a curious consumer of global citizenry, or was that something you developed and you kind of you 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 realized and you kind of started to situate yourself into more and more of those opportunities to have those types of interactions?
yeah, I've always just been really curious. I don't like to just do the same old boring thing. Um, yeah, I'm just naturally curious about different industries, different kinds of people, the way people think. Mm,
And I can see that passion for that curiosity and the diversity of relationships that you have.
yeah.
You seem to be all over the place. So I want to talk a little bit about that
Okay.
kind of concept of social. Okay, digital 1.0 to digital 2.0. You're certainly a very conversant 2.0 citizen, I would say.
Everybody's got to.
Is that out of necessity or is that out of internal motivation, internal drive
I'd
for
say
you?
both. I
Yeah.
think that I would probably get bored just doing a lot of things that other people are fine with. I like to embrace a superset of skills where it is very business minded and also very creative and ties in a lot of interconnectedness in humanity.
All
Uh,
right. And that
David's
makes,
many notes on that.
no, I got notes on a whole
You're good.
bunch of things. I got a diagram too.
I'm just, oh, good. Okay. Nice.
So now that gets us into, I think, the latest piece of your life right now, which is the
Yeah.
Innovate Summit. So for folks that I had the luxury of being able to attend last year. It was a pretty amazing experience. But folks that are unfamiliar with the event, why don't we start there? What's happening at this show? Is it even a show? Is it an event? What would you even call it? A summit?
I call it a summit because it's not a meetup. And I think the way we understand conferences doesn't exactly make sense either. Should I get into the backstory a little so people understand how it evolved? Or
I think we should because the way I
okay,
kind of understand the backstory is it's somewhat connected to some of the story we were just talking about. But go ahead, you
yeah,
take it
some
where
of
you
it
need to.
is just me traveling around and meeting different people and cultures. Some of it is my ability to explore all sorts of different businesses around the globe and tell their stories and make them popular. And part of it, a lot of it has to do with my own personal business network. So there's a few sub stories to get into before we get to the present. So, first, a decade ago in Louisville, in our offices, we used to have a thing called Think Big. And Think Big was we wanted to challenge the status quo of everybody in the city to think bigger. And it was a nicer, more polite way of saying, stop thinking small, damn it. So we wanted to keep it nice and positive and prove to everybody that instead of you just go to like one high school, one college, one specific company, and not a lot of diversity of thought because it isn't a place like a New York or a Boston. We do have a lot of great things to show off to the world, namely supply chain and logistics, food, and health. So we did, I guess you could say, like an episode or meetup of each of these, and people really enjoyed it. UPS started coming to all of them, largest employer in Louisville. Some people built different companies in there. So it
Huh.
was really very well regarded. The news kept picking it up every time we did it because it was really trying to push everything forward and get things moving in that region. And maybe it was a little before its time, a little ambitious. Maybe it was just a little meetup in our office. After a while, and especially after I left Louisville, we just stopped doing it. But we kept it going for the greater part of a year. Also, one of the world's largest events, festivals, conferences, South by Southwest, which basically built the city of Austin and used to click in at about 400 million a year of economic development, got a lot of interest in it. Started as a music festival for first couple decades. Then the internet age came. Then you had great things such as Twitter, Foursquare, and live streaming and Airbnb and Giving Tuesday all started showing up there. So it became the kingmaker for all sorts of creative technology because you'd have a lot of people sitting around the table where one person could be a brilliant inventor, the other could be a marketer, the other could be a money person, the other could be a Fortune 500, the other could be three-letter agencies and advertising and marketing firms. So you had enough diversity of powerful thought to all come together intentionally to build things forward. Then it kind of got really big and it got a little strange, and then COVID came and it's
Right.
not the same like it used to be. So I haven't actually been there for a few years, but I spent 18 years there and half a decade on their advisory. So I helped and watched this from the inside. So when you add Brian, the world traveler and infographic and community maker, some different things I've done with LinkedIn community events, all the live streaming stuff that I've done across platforms for years, and always trying to share a lot of wisdom and content through my socials. Eventually, we got to a very strange inflection point where a few years ago, we were supposed to do marketing work for a bourbon brand in Western Kentucky, in a pretty remote location in Western Kentucky, not Louisville,
Yeah.
Owensboro.
Okay.
Supposed to work together. Then they got acquired by private equity. Why am I even talking about this? I'm going somewhere, David, not to worry. And even though we didn't get to work together because they reshuffled their team, I got introduced to all the people who were making and building this gigantic waterfront for a small city. And they had a couple dollars from the federal government for economic stimulus throughout Kentucky. And we had a run there for the past couple of years. So I said, "Oh, you want to get people to come here and get on the map? Great. I have a clown car of influential people that are happy to come experience some other place a little bit off the beaten path." So for the last 2 years, we've had, I think, like 100, 150 people across 35 different states and 6 countries. And somehow they came, even though it wasn't exactly on the interstate and there wasn't really an airport next to it. Unfortunately, our time ended there. So our first 2 years are good. We're grateful to that. And we have since then moved on over to Louisville, Kentucky. So almost a complete back to the beginning of the first part of where I elaborated on this story.
Right.
Yep.
Nice full circle moment. Okay.
Yeah. There you go.
So the way I see, well, why don't we maybe share a little bit about what actually happens at Innovate? What is this show about?
Sure. I would say human-centered innovation. So a lot of people think innovation means tech and it's just a technology festival. It's not. Technology is great, but it's either a seat at the table, not the seat at the table, or it's inside of everything. Kind of like how the East Coast thinks about technology as compared to the West Coast that just thinks that technology is eating the world. First it was software is eating the world. Now AI is eating everything. I'm not sure it's quite that simple. So I think that people buy from other people that they know, like, and trust. And your network is everything. It is very important to nurture and preserve those relationships for anything that you're doing in life. And I think that many of us have been diluted or diluted, either take your pick, honestly, at all sorts of things that are promising to be better than they are. We've been
Right.
to different meetups. People are extremely transactional. We've spent plenty of time and money and travel and all that going to different events. And a lot of times you just walk away with, okay, maybe I get a deal or two, but I don't really want to hang out with these people. Or uh, we went to all the time and trouble to have a giant booth and we got leads and everybody's scanning badges, but really they're not what we're looking for in business, and they were just there to steal our swag in the first place. So there's all of these misconnections and things that are misfiring. And I think if you already have a world-class network of amazing giving people that want to reciprocate, great. Maybe you don't really need what we do. But chances are you don't really have, you might not have put in the time to build a network of that level of trust and expanse. And even if you have, everyone's a universe and everybody has different people to bring to it. So I think that's why people really like it. That maybe it sounds cliche that it is a community, but it's a community of people that are extremely giving and are also very talented. So like it's great if you have like very giving and awesome friends, but if they kind of suck at everything, I don't know that they're necessarily going to be great for your business. It might be more like to have them over at your house for a party as opposed
Right.
to build a global event around it. So I really think that the other side of it with what we call connection conductors, I very much believe that events should fall under the umbrella of hospitality. And a lot of times they just say, here's your badge, David. Good luck. Leave me alone. Give us more money next year.
Right.
And the onus is on you to make your own miracles. But if there's 50 people, 100 people, 500 people, how do you know who to talk to? You don't. So you probably just stay to yourself, you stay to your friends. You don't necessarily want to just go break through a whole bunch of conversations. That's usually a weird way to hang out with people. And it doesn't really make sense. Right. So this enables you to see that the event has like a matchmaker concierge style of people, that it's their job to say, okay, David, I see everything that you do personally, professionally, and you've got your podcast and you have all these things. So instead of you coming in with your low level expectations, not only are you going to maybe get some business and partnerships or meet one cool person, you're going to meet an array of really cool people that can help you in lots of different dimensions in your life. And we're going to start those conversations for you, no matter how introverted or extroverted you are, or both.
Right. I think that that's perhaps what separates Innovate from other conferences is that intentionality around that I did experience. Brian, one thing I wanted to kind of cover, I've been fascinated watching how you kind of move. Um, we've been we've had opportunity to connect over the past 10 years
Yeah.
on a number of occasions, including at the Innovate Summit. One of my observations at the summit was, well, lo and behold, Brian is a little bit of an introvert. I wasn't expecting that. And especially from someone who has such a strong social network, has really strong, compelling relationships. So I just wanted to ask you a little bit about that. One, are you an introvert? Did I get that right? And just kind of your thoughts on introverts versus extroverts. Is that even a real thing? And maybe even from a hospitality perspective, how Innovate has kind of really been super thoughtful around that concept.
I think you're partially correct. So I'm curious. Let me cast the question back at you and then I'll answer the rest. What
Okay.
made you think I was an introvert when you were there?
I think the pieces that I observed was at the show. Maybe it's because the enormity of the show. You seem to have a lot kind of going on, and there were moments where if, like, kind of interactions with people were a little not tense, but they were definitely, you had a lot kind of rolling on your head, and I wasn't sure if it was necessarily the magnitude of the show or the magnitude of face-to-face interaction. It wasn't something I was going to push because, well, I want to be respectful of everybody and everybody's moment wherever it is. So,
You're
but
just
that
like, hey, I
was
thought you were an extrovert. What kind of nerd are you? Like, why are you hiding in the corner?
well, yeah, to some extent, yes. So, and I was fine with that too. By the way, I actually walked away thinking, wow, that's really kind of fascinating. Of how does
Yeah,
this guy kind of manage to pull that off when it's not necessarily his native kind of position? And but that's kind of where the
sort of.
inkling, the surprise for me, kind of came from.
Yep. So I'm really glad you asked this. I feel like this could be a show, a book, and like a mini series. The amount of stuff that I have to say about this is tremendous. So a couple things. For the record, I am an ambivert. I'm not an introvert or an extrovert. Second, when I'm at an event, if it's my event, I probably will strike you as an introvert because I don't want to talk to everybody because I am watching everything going on like a hawk because I'm trying to assassinate problems before everybody notices. Like, for the last 2 years, many things were going wrong that nobody knows about because I was busy. I'm like, I can't talk to you right now. I'm not going to talk. It looks like I'm just like the quietest person in the room in the corner because I'm thinking about everything going on simultaneously. So I'm trying on my introvert brain, not because I'm not also an extrovert, because I like to play both. I will tell you that growing up, I was very, 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 very introverted. How shall I say this? So I was always labeled as like smart and gifted and all that. And it's one of the dumbest things you can do to children because that
Right.
tells you that the only thing that matters is that you're smart. I also have a brother who's 7 years younger than me and developmentally disabled. So he does not know who I am. He doesn't talk. He doesn't recognize me if I go in the room. So I felt like I sort of grew up like an only child and was like very like overprotected parents, all that kind of stuff. So for the longest time, I'm just like this brilliant introvert that doesn't really have modality of voice yet. And the thing that I noticed after a while is that people don't necessarily like you if you're smart. You're just kind of more like a smart ass. People, it's not necessarily the thing that everybody wants. So for everybody who's listening that's like a super smart introvert, the thing that I learned how to do is get really good at talking to people. And after a while, I have like a voice that sounds reassuring or whatever. Like my wife says, you could talk about anything and it'll put me to sleep. I think that's I had an MBA professor that's just like, you've like just a Michael Jordan smoothness. Maybe it's like the way that you talk, the sound of it, and what kinds of words you, whatever it is, it's been highly identified as I kind of came into my own voice that I have an ability to lean into the extroversion side. But I really do like the ambiversion because it's all me. That being said, when it comes to Innovate, there's a couple really interesting things. First, half the world's population are introverts. So I don't understand how every conference that I've ever been to ignores that fact. So they just say, come to networking, like, you'd rather die as an introvert going to working. My social battery's at 0 and I have to like walk into this room, all these maniacs. I don't know anybody. So I'm just gonna like pretend that everybody's not there and be like, dear God, please help me, please need help.
Yeah.
Go pretend to do an email and then run back to the hotel room or talk to a couple of people that I already know and hide and try to be a wallflower. So again, 50% of the world is bad at like getting out there beyond their level of introversion and nobody's like catering to it. So that's
Right.
why all the connection conductors need to do it. But here's where it gets really interesting. So I would say among the people who are the connection conductors, the real driving force ones were pretty aggressive extroverts because part of their job is to say, hey, David, you need to meet Mike. Let's go interrupt Mike from whatever he's doing, tap both of your shoulders. And that's super uncomfortable to impossible for introverts to do.
Right.
When I was talking to the connection conductors from year 1 to year 2, I said to them, I think you have it wrong. I think that it is an incomplete understanding of humanity if all you do is think that you're just going to be a bunch of alpha extroverts interrupting conversations all day. Because, and you should know this, you need to carry on your back some of the smart, more silent, carefully listening introverts that can come up with tactical ideas for you that they can share with you, maybe behind the scenes, that they're not necessarily the front line of it. And
Right.
together, you make the full army as opposed to one side or another.
Huh, that's neat. I also get that there are people who are natively introverted, and you're absolutely right, Brian, that those folks maybe need to find alternative ways to communicate that are different than just going to the big room and start, schmoozing with people. That's probably the hardest thing in the world for them to do. And what what inadvertently, this is one of my appreciations of Innovate, was that inadvertently, what other events might do is they leave a lot of that value on the table. It's not never gets realized because they
Mhm.
haven't created an environment that, you know, when you go to an event, there's naturally going to be a groundswell of an intense groundswell of talent on whatever the subject of that event is.
Mm.
Just that's why people go to that event. A, B, C, D, or E, whatever the event is, but not having the opportunity to talk to half of the people at the event always felt like a big miss to
Yeah.
me.
Not to mention the fact that it's homogenous, that the louder people will win. They
Right.
can't be the only ones with good ideas. By the
No.
way, there's plenty of people that you think are extroverts, but when you really press them to it, are introverts that have like a stage present jacket that they put on. I've had this conversation with people. You'd be surprised.
Yeah.
They have just enough to do their thing, and then they need a break from everybody.
Yep. Yeah. That might be me.
We all have our moments, and it's not a good or a bad thing. It's just a way of understanding.
Right. Well, this is a neat topic. So thank you for kind of getting into this with me. Why Louisville? I mean, you've been there before. You're back there. The maybe you could share some of connecting some of that global audience with a very, as you've described it, a very sharp and hyper talented local economy. But maybe you could spend a little time just kind of talking about that.
Yeah. So I think that there is a bit of decentralization of power when it comes to all of the powerful places that have been very popular in America that are sort of shifting right now. I think you've got places like New York and California and Florida that have been going great guns for a while, but I think they're starting to slip. I think that a lot of people are leaving. I think that they are overvalued. I think in some cases they're either physically or metaphorically on fire. And I think that there's just a lot that isn't necessarily going the right direction. So they're still running a lot of it and they're still greatly responsible for much of the nation's GDP. But I think that people want ultimately a place that they can live well, that they're not necessarily sitting in traffic all day, that there's home affordability, and that they can have their job, especially if it's a remote job. And I think people are looking for places to go. So I think some people call it the bluegrass triangle or the golden triangle. There's an opportunity zone between here in Cincinnati and northern Kentucky down to a triangle of Louisville and Lexington. There's a ton of smart talent and people. There's a ton of logistics and healthcare and food and all these things that the region is very good at. And I think if everybody came on out here, they might see that they might have access to a better life. So I think even from not just let's meet people at a conference, I think from a purely economic development angle, I think that there's a lot of business to be had here and a lot of things that people are missing. So instead of we do a conference, it's in a hotel, that's it. I think it also makes sense to have a red carpet of talented individuals throughout the region to show off and integrate with the nation and the world. So I think that there's definite opportunity there.
Yeah, that's part of what I experienced last year was to see some of that, to see some of that intentionality around what you're trying to do, what you are doing. And so just speaking, so you have your next summit coming up in May, is that right?
That's right, right after Memorial Day.
Okay. And how can people find out about this?
Yep. Well, chances are they can talk to me on LinkedIn and all that. And of course, all the things that they need to know about the summit are over on theinnovatesummit.com.
All right, I'll share some links. And you, it's kind of interesting how you can flip just to stay within the show of, your life is a series of I don't know if they're intentional flips, Brian, and if they're sequential or if they're just kind of opportunistic, but you've been, in my view, somebody who's been very comfortable making some of those flips. Why do you think that is? What
I
is
think I
it? Go
went
ahead.
through a lot of very hard things in my life. So I think a lot of folks are just afraid that they're going to fall off a cliff because they have to do something new. And really, the worst that happens is that they might look stupid on the internet for 5 seconds. I mean, I've done plenty of things that didn't necessarily take off, so I don't mind trying all these different things. And usually, when you think you're off to this big jump, you're just basically standing on the edge of a curb, and there's not as much wrong as people might think. So I think when you've been there, done that, and have faced and encountered and survived through difficult things, you can kind of do anything.
Right.
So this is relatively minor.
And do you think Innovate is a sequential flip, or is it something as a standalone kind of moment in your kind of professional journey?
I think it makes sense with all the things that I probably wanted to do, but I can't always do effectively on the now sourcing end, right? So if I want to bring a whole bunch of people together, if I'm doing a marketing campaign promoting something and getting media attention on it, they're not necessarily the same thing. And I
Right.
think it was just a confluence of a lot of things at the same time. I think that I didn't set out thinking that I was going to do that. I think that events got a lot worse before the pandemic. I think they were getting like very money hungry and greedy. I think they all fell apart during the pandemic. And I think that they haven't exactly figured out what the secret sauce is since then, because they noticed that not everybody wants to get together in gigantic groups, but we crave all these quality connections in how to go in the future of life. And I think a lot of times people are very frustrated and they're tired of going to events because they view it as something that we're supposed to do, we got by without doing, and they're just all trying to figure it out.
Yeah, there's definitely some pressure around,
Mm.
events in particular, volume versus depth. Um, and there's, a little bit of an ROI. It's easier to measure, I'd say, volume than it is depth.
Right. And that's what we end up doing. We end up
Right.
lying and deluding ourselves, like I said before, with the badge scans, but it could just be a series of people that just wanted that pen.
Right.
So, because it's easy to measure volume instead of the actual impact, we end up doing that. And we're making the wrong call because one person can change everything.
Yeah, and it's neat. So that's it sounds like a big part of the underlying thesis around the Innovate Summit is an opportunity to really have that depth,
Yeah.
particularly around the space of innovation. So who's typically going to be showing up at this conference, just for everyone to kind of hear?
Yeah. So it isn't just a single silo, right? So a lot of people are just like, can't you just make a healthcare conference? Can't you just do an AI summit? No, that's not enough. So it's a combination, sort of like rebuilding the nucleus of what I viewed as pretty magical in the world of South by. I think that there's plenty of inventor types, but there's also lots of corporate types. There's a lot of small business people. There's a lot of marketers. There's plenty of door openers to ecosystems, whether they are other regions throughout the United States or even other countries.
Yeah.
And then I would say there's a lot of the financier types as well. So it's all of these people when they are brought together, even across role and industry, that they say, wow, I never thought that me doing X could be compatible with Y. And then sometimes you just have really super connectors that have tremendous power and influence. You have other people that just own lots and lots of different companies. So it's really interesting to watch this insane multiplier effect of everybody starts working together.
Huh. Well, it's a fun show. I can say that for sure. Haven't been there,
Really?
and
Yeah.
it was the pace was very different than what I expected. I was expecting volume, and I got depth, and it was for me anyway. It was a novel kind of moment to kind of step back and really think about what's happening in the moment. What are the relationships I'm making? What are the discussions I was having, which
Yeah.
also very surprising and meaningful. So it was a good show. I just don't know how else to say that.
I'll take it. Sounds good to me. It's the alternative.
Well, I think you guys, putting the show together, you had a lot of intentionality around those types of experiences. You mentioned the concept of hospitality. I don't think that was my experience at the show. I don't think was unique, nor do I think it was accidental. It was something that was procured with a lot of purpose on your part and the other folks that were managing the show. So I certainly appreciated that.
Yeah,
Um, and I valued that. So for those folks that are in the area, I couldn't say strongly enough. If you're playing in the innovation space in any kind of way, this is a must attend. Okay.
that's right. What else are you guys really doing? Come on now.
um, I did have a final ask in terms of here on this show, the flip story. One of the things we do is we have a signature element called the flipped recipe book, and we invite all of our guests to kind of share some actionable kind of whether it's the framework, the formula, the ingredients, and the outcome of something that maybe somebody listening is either contemplating a flip of their own or even looking to flip a particular moment and overcome and find success in some way. And so, Brian, I'd like to invite you to drop a recipe into our book.
Okay. Well, a lot of people think that I'm kind of like just all good natured and chill and all that, but I actually am a ridiculously intense person. And I'm either like ridiculously intense or sleeping. And people don't really get that. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, I think that you should do stuff on a world class level and just live every day like it's your last. And they're like, what the heck, man? Like, well, like I said, I've been through plenty of things in the past. And I mean, so what I didn't say from that time when we went to Louisville, we, trigger warning, this is a sad thing. Our first child together passed away. So I would tell you that, making like a marketing agency or infographics or an event, if you can live through that, is nothing, right? So when I say live every day like your last, I'm not kidding around when it comes to that. So I think a lot of people are very hesitant and they're like, oh, my reputation, what's everybody going to think? Did I polish this correctly? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, just start. I think people are in love with the start and the ribbon cutting and the cake and the celebration. And a lot of people don't want to just go for it. I think that you don't know how much time you have on this earth. And it really does matter to try. Like, what's the worst that happens, right? So let's say I tried to do Innovate. What's like the worst thing that happens? Everybody's going to throw tomatoes at me, that I sucked, that it was a waste of their time. Fine, don't come back to Kentucky. Like, I'm not like the chairman of Kentucky. Do whatever you want, right? Or infographics are terrible, or AI will do it, or Canva, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, well, go try these things. They're not easy. And it takes a colossal amount of time and failure and trial and error to try to perfect these things on a world level. And I think a lot of times we're not as far away from world class as we think, because a lot of it just comes down to a lot of practice and repetition.
That's amazing. Thank you. That's a
Yeah.
really nice little recipe there. So I'm excited to add that into the book.
Yeah.
Well, folks, Brian, I do want to say thank you for coming on the show. It's really fascinating to kind of explore what you've been up to and to hear kind of how you've managed to flip your own story in multiple ways. Thank you for sharing that last moment on a personal level.
Yeah. Of course.
Sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
And yeah, I think we're going to wrap it out here and say thank you to everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, everybody.